Section 5.3, Annual Percentage U APY. In this section, we are going to learn the difference between APR and APY. Because of compounding throughout the year, with compounded interest, the actually increase in a year is usually more than the annual percentage rate. So for example, if $1,000 were invested at 10%, the following table shows the value after 1 year at different compounding frequencies. So this 10% here is the APR, the annual percentage rate. If I invest $1,000 with a 10% APR, then my P is 1,000, my R is 10%, which is 0.10. And in this table, I'll have different frequency when it's compounded annually, compounded semi-annually, compounded quarterly, compound monthly, compound daily. So when it's compound annually, my N is 1 because that is once a year. When it's compound semi-annually, N is 2 because it's twice a year. When it's compounding quarterly, N is 4 because there's 4 quarters a year. When it's compound monthly, N is 12. And when it's compound daily, N is 365. So we're going to look at the value in the account after 1 year. And I'm using the compounding interest formula in this case, which is A equals P times 1 plus R over N raised to the NT. So I'm going to use this compound interest formula in this table here. I will replace P with 1,000, R with 0.10, T with 1, and then N is going to be different depending on how it's compounding. So for the first row, I'll replace N with 1. A equals 1,000 times 1 plus 0.10 over 1 raised to 1 times 1. So that is 1,000 times 1 plus 0.10 to the first, which is 1,000 times 1.10, which is 1,100. If I invest $1,000 in the account that pays 10% APR, after 1 year, I have $1,100 in the account. So 1,100 is including the 1,000 principal and the 100 interest. Now, when it's compounding semi-annually, I'll replace my N with 2. Everything stays the same except for my N is going to be different. My P is still 1,000. My R is still 0.10. My T is still 1. My N is now 2. So let's simplify this. I have 1,000 times 0.10 divided by 2 is 0.05. And 0.05 plus 1 is 1.05 raised to the square because 2 times 1 is 2. So I'm going to take 1.05 squared and then multiply by 1,000. 1.05 squared times 1,000. I get $1,102.50. If I invest $1,000 in the account that pays 10% APR, and compounding twice a year. After 1 year, I have $1,102.50. So notice that when compounding twice a year, compare with compounding once a year, I get higher interest. Even though they both are 10% APR, but the more compound I have, the more interest I earn. Next, with exactly the same information, but now we are compounding quarterly instead. So everything stay the same. I'll just replace my n with 4. So I get 1,000 times 0.10 divided by 4 is 0.025, and 0.025 plus 1 is 1.025. Raised to 4 times 1 is 4. I'll take 1.025 raised to the 4th and then multiply by 1,000. 1.025 raised to the 4 times 1,000. So I get 1103.81289062. But this is in amount of dollars, so I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places. So it's 1103.81. So I get $1,103.81. So if you compare this 1103.81 with 1102.50, this earned me more interest than this one. It's because this is compounding 4 times a year. So again, with the same principle, with the same amount of time, with the same APR, the more compound you have, the more interest that you earn. Next, I'm going to calculate the amount of money that I have in the account after 1 year if I'm compounding 12 times a year. So everything else stays the same. I'll just replace my n with 12. I am going to put this whole thing in the calculator all at once. I have 1,000 parentheses 1 plus 0.10 divided by 12 and all raised to the 12. I get 1104.71306744, and I'm going to round it to 2 decimal places, which is 1104.71. And compare that with the previous one. One is compounding 12 times a year, one is compounding 4 times a year. The one that compounding 12 times a year earns me more interest. And the last row, I want to compound daily. So I'm going to replace n with 365. Everything stayed the same except for n. My principal is 1,000. My APR is 10%. My T is 1 year. My n is now 365. And I'm going to put this in the calculator. So I take 1,000 parentheses 1 plus 0.10 divided by 365, close parentheses, raised to 365. I get 1105.155786162. And if I round it to 2 decimal places, I have 1105.16. So when I compound annually, my interest is $100. When I compound semi-annually, my interest is 102.50. When I compound quarterly, my interest is 103.81. When I compound monthly, my interest is 104.71. And when I compound daily, my interest is 105.16 because my principal is $1,000. So the more compounding I have throughout the year, the more interest that I earn. So the annual percentage yield is calculating the actual interest that you earn throughout the year. So if you are compounding more than once a year, you will earn more interest than the actual APR. So to calculate that, we just take the interest divided by the principal, we get the annual percentage yield. So for example, let's take a look at this row. When I compounding 365 times a year, the amount I have at the end of 1 year is 1105.16, which means my interest is $105.16. So if I take 105.16 divided by my principal, which is $1,000, then I'll have 0.10516, which is equivalent to 10.516%. So when I'm compounding daily, the amount I have after 1 year is 1105.16. With the principal of $1,000, that makes my interest 105.16. So if I take the interest of 105.16 divided by the original amount of $1,000, I get 0.10516, which is equivalent to 10.516%, which is higher than the APR 10%. So this is called the annual percentage yield. Similar to the rest of the table, if you want to find the APY for this number, you take 104.71 divided by 1,000. If you want to find the APY for this number, you take 103.81 divided by 1,000. If you want to find the APY for this number, you take 102.50 divided by 1,000. Now, if you want to find the APY for this, you take 100 divided by 1,000. And you notice that the APY for this will be the same as APR because you only compounded once a year. The annual percentage yield is the actual percent a quantity increases in 1 year. It can be calculated as APY equals 1 plus R over N raised to the N minus 1. So you can use this formula instead. Example, Bank A offers an account paying 1.2% compounded quarterly. Bank B offers an account that paying 1.1% compounded monthly, which is offering a better rate. So we have two different banks. Bank A
offers 1.2%
compounded quarterly. And then Bank B offers the account that paying 1.1% compounded monthly. And we want to see which one is better. In order to do so, I am going to calculate the APY for each bank and then compare to see which one offers a better rate. So in Bank A, I have my rate is 1.2%, which is 0.012, and it's compounded quarterly, so my N is 4. While in Bank B, I have the rate of 1.1%, which is equivalent to 0.011, and that is compounded monthly, so my N is 12. I am going to use the APY formula here. APY equals 1 plus R over N raised to the N minus 1. For Bank A, I'll substitute R with 0.012, N with 4. 1 plus 0.012 over 4 raised to the 4 minus 1. 0.012 divided by 4 is 0.003. I have 1 plus 0.003 to the 4 minus 1. 1 plus 0.003 is 1.003. So I have 1.003 to the 4 minus 1. And I'm going to put that in my calculator. 1.003 raised to the 4 minus 1 equals, I have 0.01205410808. And to convert that into percent, I multiply this by 100%. So I move the decimal point to the right 2 places. I have 1.2054100808%. The question doesn't give me any routing instruction, so I'll just leave it like this. But in the homework or in the test or any assignment, please look for the routing instruction. For bank B, I will replace R with 0.011 and then N with 12. I have 1 plus 0.011 over 12 to the 12 minus 1. And I can put the whole thing in the calculator. Parenthesis 1 plus 0.011 divided by 12, close parentheses, raised to the 12 minus 1 equals. If your calculator does not allow you to put it all in at once, you can also break it up. So start off with 0.011 divided by 12. And add 1. And then raise this number to the 12th power and subtract 1. I'll get exactly the same number. So I get APY is 0.01105562813. And then I will convert that into a percent. So I'm going to move my decimal point to the right 2 places. So I have APY equals 1.105562813%. Again, because the question didn't give me any routing instructions, I'll leave it like this. The APY for Bank A is 1.2054100808%. And then the APY for Bank B is 1.105562813%. So between 1.2% and 1.1%, which bank offers a better rate? Of course, the 1.2%, which is Bank A. Next example, question A. Calculate the APY for an account that pays 4% compounded daily. They're asking for the APY, so I'm going to use the APY formula. APY equals 1 plus R over N raised to the N minus 1. My R is 4%, which is 0.04. And this compounded daily makes my N 365. So I'm going to replace R with 0.04 and N with 365. I will put this in a calculator. First, I will simplify my parentheses first. So I'm going to take 0.04 divided by 365. And then I take this number plus 1. This is the number inside my parentheses. And then I raise this number to 365. And then I subtract 1. I get 0.04080849,313. The question asked me to round to the nearest hundredth of a percent. That means I need to convert this number to a percent first, and then I round it to the nearest hundredth. So to convert this number to a percent, I move my decimal point to the right 2 places and insert the percent notation. So I have 4.080849,313%. And then I'll round this percent to the nearest hundredth. Rounding to the nearest hundredth means rounding to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places here. This is 0, so I round down to 4.08%. So the APY for this problem is 4.08%. Question B. Calculate the APY for an account that pays 4% compounded monthly. I need to calculate the APY on the accounts that pay 4%, which means my R is 0.04, compounded monthly, which means 12 times a year, and is 12. So I'm going to use my APY formula. I'll replace R with 0.04 and N with 12. 1 plus 0.04 over 12 to the 12 minus 1. And I put this all in the calculator at once. 0.04 divided by 12 plus 1. Raise the whole thing to the 12 minus 1. I get 0.04074154,291. Then I'll need to convert this into a percent first before I round. So I'm going to move the decimal point to the right 2 places and then insert the percent notation. So I get 4.074154,291%. The question is asking me to round to the nearest hundredth, which means rounding to 2 decimal places. That means I will stop right here. This digit is 4, so I'm going to round down to 4.07%. Question C. Calculate the APY for an account that pays 4% compounded annually. So R is 4%, which is 0.04. Compounded annually, that means I'm compounding once a year, and is 1. I need to calculate my APY, so I'm going to use my APY formula. I am going to substitute R with 0.04 and N with 1. I have 1 plus 0.04 over 1 raised to the 1 minus 1. 0.04 divided by 1 is 0.04. 1 plus 0.04 to the first minus 1. 1 plus 0.04 is 1.04 to the first power minus 1. 1.04 to the first power is just 1.04 minus 1. 1.04 minus 1 is 0.04. And then I convert this into a percent by moving the decimal point to the right 2 places and then insert the percent notation. That is 4%. These 3 examples, they all have 4% APR, which is 4% interest rate per year. The only difference is that this one is compounding 365 times a year. This one is compounding 12 times a year. And this one is compounding once a year. Notice that the more compounding I have per year, the higher APY I have. This one is compounding 365 times a year. APY is 4.08%. This one is compounding 12 times a year. APY is 4.07%. This one is compounding once a year. APY is 4%.